Yo, what is going on, guys? So, Avowed came out recently, and the game is not doing too great. Now, it's not a complete bomb, like a complete failure, nobody's playing at Concord level or Dustborn level, but it's also not a huge success, and I think it's time we just all come out and admit the facts. A lot of people are really enjoying the game, a lot of people are really hating the game, and most people, myself included, just think it's mid. Those are the facts. You can enjoy Avowed, you don't have to hate it. If you enjoy the game, that's great. But can we not sit here and make these like copium-filled posts that we're gonna take a look at today? Because when you do that, it just makes you look like a pathetic loser. The first post that we're gonna go over today is a reply made by Play4Index. He said, "Comparison of details and physics between Avowed and the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim 2011. And to spare you guys the 8 minutes, basically, Skyrim is much better in terms of physics." Now, Mad Curious Gamer replies, "Skyrim clearly had far superior physics. But why do people care so much about game physics anyway? You could shoot arrows at a tree IRL for that. Talk about missing the fucking point. The point is Skyrim was created 15 years ago. It was created on inferior technology, and it costed less than Avowed costs now. But for some reason, Skyrim is the better game in terms of physics and stuff like that." Another fanboy comes down and says they compared the most pointless parts of the game. Avowed combat is much better than Skyrim. Okay, but the combat in both games absolutely suck, because the combat isn't the point of an RPG. When you compare the actual RPG mechanics, Skyrim still comes out on top. Nice try though. This is like if a Doom game came out, and it absolutely sucked in terms of combat, but the story was great. And someone tried to defend the game by saying, well, the story is great. Like, okay, that's amazing and all, but people don't come to Doom for the story. This next fanboy called Beast of Truth says this: "Even while being on Xbox Game Pass, PC Game Pass, and at 3 AM when most people are asleep, #Avowed still has more players than Concord. Probably because Concord doesn't exist anymore. And is that really a high bar to set? That's like saying, my burger I created tastes better than the loaf of shit my dog laid in the front yard. Like, okay, maybe it does, but yeah, congrats, that's kind of to be expected. Or, my restaurant sold more burgers than the restaurant down the road that shut down 2 weeks ago. Like, congrats, dude, you're a real fucking winner." This just shows the desperation of fanboys in the gaming community. Concord is shit. We all know it's shit. Herman Hulse must have been smoking that OG Kush to ever think it would have been a good idea to put out something like Concord. Now, AA Azrael here says it best. In what world is this a flex? Like, great, you did better than one of the most mocked games in recent history. Avowed failed, but managed to reach #1 on the charts before it even had its full release? Yeah, and you know what other game did that? Dragon Age the Veilguard. Why don't we go ask that studio how they're doing right now? Oh wait, so Vera here says Avowed's Steam numbers are looking pretty bad and pumps out a video basically just laughing at it. Dark Protagonist replies, Game Pass. Game Pass exists. I hit him with the Game Pass existed for Stalker 2 as well, but that game did much better. He then asks, why are you comparing Stalker 2 to Avowed? I smack him with the both Game Pass games. One did much better than the other. He then says, so you have the same expectations from all the games. Someone else hits him with a reality check. Both big games. Avowed probably had higher budget. Both are on Game Pass. One performed great, one not so much. That's how you measure success and failure if it's not already clear. Why are you guys so hell-bent on defending a game that's definitely not doing good? And hell, let's strengthen the argument a little bit farther. Starfield, when it first came out, was a game that was mocked for being pretty mid. But you know what? That game had over 300,000 concurrent players on Steam database. And to strengthen this argument even farther, it was the same sort of genre that Avowed is in. In fact, I brought up Dragon Age the Veilguard earlier to point out how much of a flop it was. even that game did much better than Avowed. 3 times better when it comes to the all-time peak. If you mocked Dragon Age the Veilguard when it first came out by showing its player count, and you are now defending Avowed's player count, you are a hypocrite. So, Pirate Nation here makes a post saying that the new Yakuza pirate game is doing better than Avowed. And personally, I'm happy to hear this because Yakuza games are genuinely great, and I think that Pirate Yakuza is an incredible game. It has amazing optimization, a unique art style that looks great, it's charming, and genuinely a game filled with soul. As someone who's not even that big on Yakuza because I've never really played it before, I'm actually looking at getting into this game and possibly even the others in the Yakuza franchise because of it. Now, a fanboy rushes to the defense and says it's almost like Avowed is on a cheap live service. Well, Starfield and Stalker 2 were on the same cheap live service, but their numbers absolutely eclipse Avowed's. And just because a game is successful on Game Pass doesn't mean the studio won't get shut down. Take a look at Hi-Fi Rush, which is an unfortunate situation because I actually love that game, and it's a shame what happened to it. In fact, Fallout 4 is on Game Pass, and even at the moment, 10 years after release, the game is doing better than Avowed with a higher 24-hour peak and a much higher all-time peak. Oh yeah, and so is Skyrim, a game that came out 15 years ago and is also in Game Pass. Avowed is a flop, it only got 17 concurrent. Pirate Yakuza, yet not a fucking peep. Interesting that, isn't it? So ponies, are we calling this a flop? Yeah, it's not like Yakuza is a much more niche game made by a much smaller studio with a much smaller budget. Also, this has nothing to do with PlayStation versus Xbox. People are just so wrapped up in this ass console war. If this were a PlayStation game, people would be shitting on it just the same. A game that doesn't do that well is a game that doesn't do that well, whether it be an Xbox game, PlayStation game, Nintendo game, or a fucking ColecoVision game. There's a huge problem with fanboy communities and just accepting reality. If you're a PlayStation gamer, you have to admit that Concord was a financial disaster. You have to admit that Forspoken was a financial disaster. You have to admit when a PlayStation game fails. That's fucking life. If you're an Xbox dude, you have to admit that Avowed is not doing as well as it should be doing, considering the studio behind the game. That is life. Stop letting your fanboyism get in the way of facts and reality. It makes you look like a dick rider. Now, you know, I might end up being wrong about this, and in a couple months they'll be talking about how Avowed was the biggest success of all time. But I think this is how things are going to turn out. A couple months are going to go by, we're going to see layoffs, and all these articles are going to be talking about what went wrong with Avowed. Why didn't Avowed sell as well as it should have? Because man, there's one thing in this world that I learned. Men lie, women lie, but there's one thing that doesn't lie, and that's numbers, motherfucker. I got nothing against anyone in my audience that enjoys this game. In fact, I'm happy for you. I've enjoyed games that were huge financial failures, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I fucking loved Black Ops 4, and I'm never going to be ashamed to admit that. I loved how it rewarded skilled players so much and punished campers. I thought the zombies was unique, and I played the fuck out of the game. At the end of the day, it just didn't perform as well as it should have. Sometimes you gotta admit reality. Anyway, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike, and peace.